The haunting of Mercy Hospital. In the heart of the city, nestled among the towering skyscrapers and bustling streets, stood Mercy Hospital, a once prestigious medical facility that now lay abandoned. Its halls filled with the echoes of suffering and despair. Rumors swirled about the hospital, whispers of malpractice, mistreatment, and unspeakable horrors that had taken place within its walls. Patients had vanished without a trace, their screams echoing through the empty corridors long after they were gone. I was a young medical student when I first heard the stories about Mercy Hospital. Intrigued by the tales of its dark past, I decided to investigate, determined to uncover the truth behind the rumors. As I stepped through the hospital's rusted gates, I was struck by an overwhelming sense of dread. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the once pristine halls were now crumbling and decrepit. Ignoring the warning signs, I pressed on, my curiosity driving me deeper into the heart of the hospital. As I explored its abandoned wards and operating rooms, I felt as though I was being watched, as though unseen eyes were following my every move. It wasn't long before I encountered the first sign that Mercy Hospital was not as abandoned as it seemed. A shadowy figure darted past me, disappearing into the darkness before I could get a good look. Heart pounding, I followed the figure deeper into the hospital, my footsteps echoing through the empty halls. I soon realized that I was not alone. The spirits of Mercy Hospital's tortured past were still here, trapped between this world and the next, their anguished cries filling the air. As I delved deeper into the hospital's secrets, I uncovered a series of gruesome experiments that had been conducted on the hospital's patients. The doctors and nurses had been driven mad by their thirst for knowledge, their quest for power leading them down a dark and twisted path. But the worst was yet to come. As I explored the hospital's underground tunnels, I stumbled upon a hidden chamber where unspeakable rituals had been performed. The walls were lined with symbols of dark magic, and the air was heavy with the stench of blood. Terrified, I tried to flee, but it was too late. The spirits of Mercy Hospital had been awakened, their wrath unleashed upon anyone who dared to set foot within their domain. I ran, the sound of ghostly footsteps echoing behind me as I fled for my life. But no matter how fast I ran, I could not escape the horrors that lurked within the walls of Mercy Hospital. In the end, I was lucky to escape with my life, but the memories of that night will haunt me forever, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurks just beneath the surface of our world. And as I look back on my experience, I can't help but wonder if Mercy Hospital is truly abandoned, or if its tortured spirits still roam its halls, waiting to claim their next victim. Ward 13, a tale of terror. In the heart of the city, overshadowed by the imposing skyline, stood St. Jude's Hospital. Its towering structure a beacon of hope for those in need of medical care. Yet within its walls lurked a darkness that few dared to confront. The infamous Ward 13. Legend had it that Ward 13 was cursed, a place where patients checked in but never checked out. As a seasoned nurse at St. Jude's, I had heard the rumors, but I never believed them until I was assigned to work the night shift on Ward 13. On my first night in Ward 13, I felt a chill run down my spine as I stepped through the doors. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and an eerie silence hung over the ward like a shroud. The fluorescent lights flickered ominously, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. As I made my rounds, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I tried to brush it off as paranoia, but the sensation only grew stronger with each passing moment. It was as though the very walls of Ward 13 were alive, whispering secrets that sent shivers down my spine. It wasn't long before I encountered the first sign that Ward 13 was not as it seemed. A patient lying in bed with his back to me whispered incoherently to himself, his eyes fixed on something unseen. When I approached him, he turned to face me, his eyes wide with terror. "They're coming for us," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're coming to take us away." I tried to calm him, but he would not be comforted. He insisted that something was lurking in the shadows, something malevolent and hungry. I dismissed his claims as the ramblings of a delusional mind, but deep down, I knew that there was something more to his fear. As the night wore on, strange and unsettling things began to happen. Equipment malfunctioned for no apparent reason, and the temperature in the ward plummeted, despite the thermostat being set to a comfortable level. Patients reported seeing shadowy figures lurking in the corners of their rooms, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. I tried to rationalize the occurrences, attributing them to stress and exhaustion. But deep down, I knew that something was terribly wrong. Ward 13 was alive with a darkness that defied explanation, and it was growing stronger with each passing moment. As the night reached its darkest hour, I found myself face to face with the source of the ward's malevolence, a presence so ancient and powerful that it defied comprehension. It whispered to me from the shadows, promising unimaginable horrors if I dared to defy it. But I refused to be cowed. With every ounce of courage I possessed, I stood up to the darkness, confronting it head-on with the strength of my will. And in that moment, I felt a surge of power, unlike anything I'd ever known, a power that banished the darkness and restored light to Ward 13 once more. When the sun rose over St. Jude's Hospital, Ward 13 was no more. The darkness that had plagued it for so long was gone, replaced by the warmth and light of a new day. And though the memory of that night will stay with me forever, I take comfort in knowing that I faced the darkness and emerged victorious. Echoes of the Asylum. In the heart of the countryside, surrounded by rolling fields and dense forests, stood the abandoned St. Agnes Asylum, its towering structure a stark reminder of a dark and troubled past. For decades, the asylum had been a place of suffering and despair, its halls filled with the screams of the forgotten and the damned. As a paranormal investigator with a fascination for the supernatural, I had always been drawn to places like St. Agnes Asylum. Rumors of hauntings and malevolent spirits had long surrounded the abandoned institution, and I was eager to uncover the truth behind the stories. Armed with my equipment and accompanied by a small team of fellow investigators, I stepped through the asylum's rusted gates, the air thick with a sense of foreboding. The building loomed before us, its windows broken and its walls covered in graffiti. As we made our way through the asylum's decaying halls, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Shadows danced along the walls and strange noises echoed through the empty corridors. Our first stop was the asylum's former psychiatric ward, a place of unspeakable horrors where patients had been subjected to cruel and inhumane treatments. As we explored the ward, we encountered strange and unsettling phenomena. A sudden drop in temperature, unexplained footsteps echoing in the darkness, and the feeling of being touched by unseen hands. But it was in the asylum's underground tunnels that we encountered the true horror of St. Agnes. As we delved deeper into the labyrinthine passages, we stumbled upon a series of makeshift cells where the most violent and deranged patients had been kept. The walls of the cells were covered in disturbing graffiti, and the air was thick with the stench of decay. As we explored further, we encountered evidence of unspeakable atrocities, bloodstains on the walls, chains and shackles that had been used to restrain the patients, and even human remains hidden in the shadows. But it was what we encountered in the deepest recesses of the tunnels that haunts me to this day. In a hidden chamber, we found evidence of a dark and sinister ritual that had been performed by the asylum's former staff, a ritual that had unleashed a malevolent force that now roamed the halls, feeding on the suffering and despair of the asylum's former inhabitants. As we fled the asylum, pursued by the malevolent entity that dwelled within its walls, I knew that we had uncovered something far more sinister than we had ever imagined. St. Agnes Asylum was not just haunted, it was cursed, its halls forever tainted by the darkness that had been unleashed within its walls. In the years that followed, I tried to forget what I had witnessed at St. Agnes Asylum, but the memories of that night continued to haunt me. And though I have investigated many haunted places since then, none have filled me with the same sense of dread and despair as that accursed institution in the heart of the countryside. The ghosts of St. Mary's Hospital. St. Mary's Hospital stood on the outskirts of town, its imposing structure casting a shadow over the surrounding countryside. For years, it had been a place of healing and hope. But now, it was nothing more than a crumbling relic, its halls haunted by the ghosts of its past. As a young nurse, I had always been drawn to St. Mary Sinoues. There was something about its abandoned halls and forgotten rooms that called out to me, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. So when I heard rumors of strange happenings at the old hospital, I knew that I had to investigate. Armed with nothing more than a flashlight and my own curiosity, I ventured into the abandoned halls of St. Mary S., my heart pounding with excitement and fear. The air was thick with dust, and the only sound was the echo of my footsteps on the cold tiled floor. As I explored the hospital's empty wards and deserted corridors, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Shadows danced along the walls, and strange noises echoed through the darkness, sending shivers down my spine. But it wasn't until I reached the hospital's abandoned maternity ward that I encountered the true horror of St. Mary Sinoues. As I stepped into the dimly lit room, I was overwhelmed by a sense of sadness and despair. It was as though the very walls were mourning the lives that had been lost within them. As I moved further into the ward, I heard the sound of a baby crying, faint and distant, echoing through the empty halls. My heart raced as I followed the sound, my footsteps quickening with each passing moment. But when I reached the source of the sound, I found nothing but an empty crib, its blankets stained with blood. A chill ran down my spine as I realized the truth. The cries I had heard were not those of a living child, but the ghostly echoes of a tragedy long past. Determined to uncover the truth, I delved deeper into the hospital's dark history, uncovering tales of death and despair that had been long forgotten. I learned of a young mother who had died in childbirth, her spirit doomed to wander the halls of St. Mary's for all eternity. But she was not alone. As I explored further, I encountered the spirits of other patients who had died within the hospital's walls, their restless souls trapped in a never-ending cycle of torment and despair. As the night wore on, I found myself face to face with the ghosts of St. Mary Sinoues, their ethereal forms flickering in the dim light. They reached out to me, their eyes filled with sadness and longing, begging me to help them find peace. With a heavy heart, I vowed to do everything in my power to set them free. Armed with the knowledge of their tragic past, I performed a series of rituals to help guide their spirits to the other side. And as the first light of dawn broke over St. Mary's Hospital, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The ghosts had finally found their rest, their anguished cries silenced forever. But as I walked away from the abandoned hospital, I knew that the memories of that night would stay with me forever. And though I had helped the spirits of St. Mary's find peace, I couldn't shake the feeling that there were other darker forces at work within its walls, waiting to be unleashed once more. The abandoned wing. Nestled within the heart of the city, overshadowed by towering skyscrapers and bustling streets, stood the imposing structure of St. Margaret's Hospital. While the hospital itself was still operational, there was one part of the building that had long been abandoned, the infamous abandoned wing. For decades, the abandoned wing had stood as a silent sentinel, its darkened halls and empty rooms holding secrets too terrible to imagine. As a paranormal investigator with a fascination for the supernatural, I had always been drawn to places like the abandoned wing, and when I heard rumors of strange happenings within its walls, I knew that I had to investigate. Armed with my equipment and accompanied by a small team of fellow investigators, I stepped through the doors of the abandoned wing, the air thick with a sense of foreboding. The once pristine halls were now crumbling and decayed, the paint peeling from the walls and the floorboards creaking beneath our feet. As we made our way deeper into the wing, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Shadows danced along the walls and strange noises echoed through the empty corridors, sending shivers down my spine. Our first stop was the old psychiatric ward, a place of unspeakable horrors where patients had been subjected to cruel and inhumane treatments. As we explored the ward, we encountered strange and unsettling phenomena. A sudden drop in temperature, unexplained footsteps echoing in the darkness, and the feeling of being touched by unseen hands. But it was in the depths of the abandoned wing's underground tunnels that we encountered the true horror of St. Margaret's Hospital. As we delved deeper into the labyrinthine passages, we stumbled upon a series of makeshift cells where the most violent and deranged patients had been kept. The walls of the cells were covered in disturbing graffiti, and the air was thick with the stench of decay. As we explored further, we encountered evidence of unspeakable atrocities. Bloodstains on the walls, chains and shackles that had been used to restrain the patients, and even human remains hidden in the shadows. But it was what we encountered in the deepest recesses of the tunnels that haunts me to this day. In a hidden chamber, we found evidence of a dark and sinister ritual that had been performed by the hospital's former staff, a ritual that had unleashed a malevolent force that now roamed the halls, feeding on the suffering and despair of the abandoned wing's former inhabitants. As we fled the abandoned wing, pursued by the malevolent entity that dwelled within its walls, I knew that we had uncovered something far more sinister than we had ever imagined. St. Margaret's Hospital was not just haunted, it was cursed, its halls forever tainted by the darkness that had been unleashed within its walls. In the years that followed, I tried to forget what I had witnessed in the abandoned wing, but the memories of that night continued to haunt me. And though I've investigated many haunted places since then, none have filled me with the same sense of dread and despair as that cursed wing of St. Margaret's Hospital. A night shift nightmare. St. Michael's Hospital was like any other hospital during the day, busy, bustling, and filled with the sounds of life. But when the sun set and the night shift began, it transformed into something else entirely, a place of shadows and whispers, where the line between the living and the dead blurred into nothingness. As a nurse working the night shift at St. Michael's CIAS, I had seen my fair share of strange and unsettling things, but nothing could have prepared me for what I encountered one fateful night. When the hospital was plunged into darkness and the veil between the worlds grew thin, it started innocently enough. A flicker of lights, a strange chill in the air. But as the night wore on, things took a turn for the worse. Equipment malfunctioned for no apparent reason. Patients reported seeing strange figures lurking in the shadows, and the feeling of being watched became almost unbearable. I tried to dismiss the strange occurrences as the product of an overactive imagination, but deep down, I knew that something was terribly wrong. And when I heard the whispers, the faint, ghostly whispers that seemed to echo through the empty halls, I knew that I could no longer ignore the truth. Determined to uncover the source of the haunting, I set out to explore the darkest corners of the hospital, armed with nothing but a flashlight and my own courage. As I made my way through the empty corridors, I felt a sense of unease settle over me, as though I was being drawn towards something malevolent and unseen. It wasn't long before I encountered the first sign that I was not alone. A shadowy figure darted past me, disappearing into the darkness before I could get a good look. My heart pounding, I gave chase, determined to uncover the truth behind the hospital's haunting. As I delved deeper into the hospital's dark and twisted past, I uncovered tales of madness and despair, of patients driven to the brink of insanity by the horrors they had witnessed within St. Michael's walls. I learned of a young girl, a patient in the hospital's psychiatric ward, who had been subjected to cruel and inhumane treatments at the hands of the hospital staff. But it was what I discovered in the hospital's basement that chilled me to the bone. In a hidden chamber, hidden away from prying eyes, I found evidence of a dark and sinister ritual that had been performed by the hospital's former staff, a ritual that had unleashed a malevolent force that now roamed the halls, feeding on the suffering and despair of the hospital's former inhabitants. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I realized that I was in grave danger. The entity that haunted St. Michael's was powerful, more powerful than anything I had ever encountered before, and it would stop at nothing to claim me as its next victim. Desperate to escape, I fled through the hospital's empty halls, the sound of ghostly whispers echoing in my ears. But no matter how fast I ran, I could not escape the darkness that lurked within St. Michael's walls. In the end, it was only through sheer luck that I managed to escape with my life. But as I walked away from the hospital, I knew that the memories of that night would stay with me forever, a constant reminder of the horrors that lurk just beyond the veil of the living. And though I have tried to put the experience behind me, I cannot shake the feeling that St. Michael's Hospital is still out there, waiting for its next victim to fall prey to its nightmarish grasp.